Starting off, Reddit user Ricora had a couple of run-ins with what she thinks could be some demons or one demon, because she was a part of a paranormal team in the UK called 2 Haunted Venues and then 2 Haunted Investigations. So we will be referring to her as Sherry, and thank you Sherry for giving me permission to share your stories. But that brings us into number 10, one of Sherry's stories, and it's a medium takeover. Now this experience happened to one of her team members at the time, Mark, and he is a physical medium, so he lets spirits communicate through him with his energy instead of other common ways of mediumship like interpreting messages or other things like that. Not to like shame any type of medium, but there's different ones. And it's also important to note that Sherry says that she trusts Mark and his words, so we can kind of believe in the authenticity of these experiences. But basically, on a night of filming a Halloween special, Mark had what appeared to be a possession, or at least a negative experience with a spirit that was using his body. Apparently, it was a negative energy he had encountered before that was so bad that it had caused him to foam at the mouth, and his wife couldn't even snap him out of it. In this instance that Sherry saw, he was laying on the ground after collapsing and talking gibberish. As people tried to get him up or try to move him, he woke up, but Sherry said something felt off. While he had no physical changes, it was like it wasn't him. His voice was different, and looking at his face didn't really seem like it was Mark. He thrashed and resisted people helping him so much that someone's hand was forced against a wall and cut. It took 6 big guys to carry a slightly smaller Mark outside, and it smelt like sulfur, which can be known as a sign of demonic possession. And it took days for Mark to recover from this. So could this have been a demon that resurfaced for a second time, or a tormented spirit? What do we think? But let's move on next at number 9, In the Mirror. In 2017, a Reddit user on a now deleted account shared their story of a weird circumstance from their childhood. When they were 11 or 12, they stayed at their grandparents' house quite a bit. They stayed in the guest bedroom in the basement that went underused in between visits, and weird things kind of started happening. Things moved around in the room when they shouldn't have, and since the basement wasn't really accessible to their older relatives, they were kind of like, what's happening? There was a comb that was on the nightstand when before it was on the vanity, and then there were crumbs from a snack, but they didn't eat in that room, so yeah. Then they would wake up in the middle of the night to see greasy messages on the mirror of the vanity across from the bed. They didn't do them, and their grandparents couldn't really get there, so this is kind of what put them on edge the most. When they went to look in the mirror or to see it, they saw something behind themselves, so they turned around only to see there was nothing there. At that point, a chill overtook them, and when they returned to look in the mirror, it appeared as if the sheets moved behind them, and they thought, oh, nope, I am not sharing the bed with the demon, and went up to sleep on the living room couch. And I think that message was pretty clearly that someone had already made its home in the guest bedroom at Granny's. So, had to get out. But that's not the only way demons can communicate. At number 8, we have the devil has a cell phone. Back in 2014, a Polish priest named Father Marian Rachel carried out an exorcism on a teenage girl. He claims he wasn't able to drive the demon out of her soul, and as a result, is receiving taunting text messages from the demon through the teenage girl's phone. He said that the author of these texts is an evil spirit who has possessed her soul. And I know you want to know what some of these texts said, because it seems like a quite unique circumstance. So here are some examples. One is, "She will not come out of this hell. She's mine. Anyone who prays for her will die." And so Priesty replied, kind of something along the lines of, "I will pray for her," and then he got another response saying, "Shut up, preacher. You cannot save yourself, idiot. You pathetic old preacher." Which is kind of rude, but he said she should get further help for her possession. So was it a demon or a prank? I want to know. But if you think text is the only demon tech communication, think again, because at number 7 we have email chain. Now, years ago, a story circulated around on Reddit and Tumblr about a girl named Danny who tried to start a cursed email chain. If you don't remember those chains, they essentially said to forward the email to like 5, 10, or even more of your friends, or else you will have bad luck for eternity or something like that. Now, Danny's friends who told the story said that she seemed to grow more and more anxious and kind of unhinged as she prepared to communicate with a number of demons to try to make the scariest email chain possible. When she finally got in contact with one, apparently it sent her an email. No subject line, no sender, and only one phrase: "Desisto." and that's one of the Latin words for stop. Now the next day at school, she told all of this to her friends, who were thankful because they hoped this sign would get her to stop, but she laughed at them and told them it was just the beginning. Now this didn't really sit right with her friends, and it didn't really seem like her anymore, and it seemed like a different person talking in her body, so they were kind of thrown off, and then after that her friends just never saw her again. Now many people assume she just did this as a prank and then moved away, but it was never confirmed what happened, so was it a demon emailing her? Demailing her, maybe? That doesn't sound right. On to number 6, scratches from a demon. Now, this is the start of a string of events from Sherry, aka Reddit user Rakora. She did a public ghost hunt at Dudley Castle, and weird stuff happened in the dark. Basically, this team had people laying in these 2 stone coffins where it was common to feel like there is a pressure on your chest, like someone is pressing on it, and during this there was also a seance with a medium happening at a different table. Over at the medium, while not too much was happening, one of the guests said he felt like his face was burning, like the feeling after you've been slapped. I was just about to slap myself, but I won't. Anyways, they checked up on him, but he said he was alright. Then once the seance ended and people were getting out of the coffins, one of the people said their chest felt tight, so they put on all the lights for health and safety reasons, which is great, but then people gasped across the room by the medium. In Sherry's own words, the gentleman who had been slapped during the seance had 3 scratches down his face. They weren't human fingernail size, they almost looked like a cat had swiped his face, like really thin lines down his face. They were bleeding slightly, and we had to administer official first aid as an incident on site. Now, the weird thing is he never touched his face the entire time, as there were multiple cameras covering the event even in the dark room, kinda like dark light cameras. Really, that's a message not to mess with dark stuff if I've ever seen it. I'm already enough of a scaredy cat. Cat scratches too, wow. Ugh. Ooh. But that's not even where the story ends. At number 5, dense darkness. So right after that, once the gentleman was moved and cleaned up in the next room to help with the scratches, the room was dark once again, and Sherry had her own unnerving experience. She stood next to the empty stone coffins and could feel a presence beside her. She could only see it in her periphery, but she described it as dense black, smaller than human, but human-like, with an almost goat-like face, kind of like shadows, super tight, that type of dense black. And even when she turned to face it head on, she said it seemed as if she was getting an incomplete peripheral vision. It made her uncomfortable to the point that she even swapped places with a teammate. She noticed that her teammate may have felt the same presence, but he was enough of a skeptic that he didn't talk about it. Ever. She thinks that it could have been a demonic presence, which leads me to number 4, final message from Dudley Demon. A year or so later, during a Halloween event, the same one where Mark had his unfortunate negative experience we talked about earlier, the team caught a mysterious image on camera. Sherry believes the image matches the demon or being she saw in one of the years prior, although another teammate says it was a cat. But what is more haunting about the story is that Sherry believes a demon, maybe that same demon in the photo, came home with her. That night, they caught the questionable footage. She was at peace after all of the questionable happenings and things that threw her off, but that wasn't normal for her. She was the sit down, decompress, don't sleep, lights on, watch a Disney movie type thing. Even as a paranormal investigator, she needed to do that. But this time, she was so calm. No one was at home, and she was blissful, living her life. She even heard steps up and down the stairs and felt like there was a presence outside her bedroom door, but knew no one was home. But she just passed out easy, unfazed, woke up right as rain. And you might be dismissing this as a nice coincidence of a good night's sleep, but just wait for it. A year later, going back to this same castle, Dudley Castle, for the first time since the last time, where Mark had his possession and they caught the strange footage, Sherry had forgotten about all this, but the second she stepped out the front door with all of her gear ready, something just washed over her. She felt feverish and like she was gonna pass out, and this kept going to the point that she was willing to try a spiritual cleanse with her medium, but when she walked through the archway in the castle courtyard, the feeling just lifted off her. It felt like something, the demon, had used her body as a lift back and forth, just wanted a year's vacay from the castle, and then hitched a ride. Maybe. I think that honestly makes the most sense. But let's go to number 3, a demon in his home. Reddit user Annoying Rooster wanted to share his story 3 years ago about a run-in with a demon that made him move out of his place. It all started when he had a really bad dream at the beginning of October. He recounted parts of it, like something hovering over his bed and giving him a disgusted look, and then waited minutes past and something said in a faint whisper, it was just a weird dream, and he dismissed it as a nightmare and just went out for a walk. He locked his door on the way out, cleared his head for a couple hours. Kind of a good idea. I like taking walks. But when he came back, his front door was just wide open. He was thrown off, obviously, and a bit shaken, but he dismissed it, but that wasn't the end of it. At number 2, demons back again. A bit later that month, he got home late and his house was more heated than usual. It was really cold outside and it was just like 83 degrees Fahrenheit in his house. He thought that was kind of weird, but then he just went and gamed on his computer, like we all do. But then, a couple hours later, he heard a bang in another room in his apartment. No one was there, even when he went to search, but he found a large hole against his wall and his snow globe had fallen over and cracked and dented. And when he went back to his computer, it was off. And not asleep, but off, like the VGA cord was unplugged and he felt like he was being watched. So he, on a whim, took a photo, and in the photo there were 2 red eyes looking at him. After that, there were more small incidents, seeing things from the corner of his eye, hearing knocking and footsteps, but it all came to a head on December 4th, which leads us to our number 1, demon eviction. Now, at this point, Reddit user Annoying Rooster, he was kinda used to small tapping noises and dismissed them, but on December 4th he heard a loud slam, so he waited and then investigated. He was checking to see why his bathroom light that he always left on was off when he felt an extreme burning sensation on the back of his hand, and there were 3 scratch marks across the top. He made his way back to his bedroom and looked back to the bathroom to see the form of what must have been a demon in the bathroom doorframe. To quote, "I saw what looked like something so tall its head touched the ceiling. It was all black, but with distinct features of a huge figure and what looked to be also horns on the top of its head. It also had the same piercing red eyes as the photo." So he did the smart thing and grabbed what he needed for work the next day and got the heck out of there. Cause if it can leave a physical touch, it's something. You know. And so he moved out completely and found out that the owner of the home, much later, had passed and the house caught on fire and burnt to the ground. So he doesn't want to know how or why, but obviously something off was there.
Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Voynich manuscript. This is easily one of the most mysterious things in human history. It's a codex that has been carbon dated to the 15th century. It contains hundreds of pages of illustrations and diagrams of plants, people, and astronomical images, but here's the strange thing. Every page contains text written in an unknown language. It's been over 100 years now since it surfaced, and in that time, every genius codebreaker and linguistic expert in the world has tried to decipher what the words say, and they have all failed. The pictures seem to show that it's a complex analysis of life and the universe, but who wrote it? If they had a language, surely they couldn't have been the only one of their kind. What do you guys think of this mystery? Coming out number 6 now, we have the Emerald Tablet. This is an incredible mystery because it doesn't actually exist anymore. It was said to be like the Philosopher's Stone, containing the key to turning any metal into pure gold. It was mentioned in an Arabic book around the 7th century, it was then translated into Latin in the 12th century, and even Isaac Newton himself made a copy of it. The problem is, the text from the Emerald Tablet reads more like a list of 14 riddles. Many people have tried to decode its secrets, and all have failed. Alright, moving on to the number 5 spot now, we have the Nazca lines. These huge 1,000-foot geoglyphs in southern Peru depict animals such as birds, fish, llamas, monkeys, and even humans, but only from above. They weren't properly documented until pilots spotted them in the early 1900s. The thing is though, they were made about 2,000 years ago, long before the invention of flying. Some researchers have said there was no way they could have been made unless you could see them from above. So, if they couldn't fly back then, how did they make the lines, or more importantly, who or what were they for? Coming in at number 4 now, we have the glowing rocks. Hendra Down is a collection of Neolithic age stones put together in England about 5,000 years ago. That's a couple of thousand years older than Stonehenge. In 2016, scientists made an incredible discovery. There were markings on the stone that could only be seen at night. They first realized this when the symbols appeared from a camera flash. Then they realized the stones around the area contained quartz, which glows in the dark when it's smashed together with another piece of quartz. The researchers knew that the people who built this associated darkness with the supernatural and strange pagan rituals, but that's about everything they know. Who the messages were for and what they meant remains shrouded in the mystery of time. Okay, coming in at the number 3 spot now, we have the Codex Gigas. This early 12th century book is also known as the Devil's Bible. It's almost 9 inches thick and weighs 165 pounds. It was said to have been written by a monk who had been locked up for breaking his vows. He promised that if the monastery let him live, he would write them a book that would contain all of human knowledge. Legend says he did this by selling his sold to the devil. The book contains the whole of the Bible, as well as copies of other historical texts. It contains 310 pages in total, even a drawing of the devil, but it's missing 12 pages. Some say these missing pages contain satanic texts to conjure the devil himself. Okay, next up at number 2 now, we have the photograph. In 2014, Reddit user Mariah KL13 shared with everyone a creepy bottle she found on a California beach. It looked more like a jar and was filled with bright pink water. She emptied out the strange liquid and saw a piece of paper wrapped up neatly with a black ribbon. She opened the jar and unfolded the paper. It was a washed out photograph of a woman with a bunch of needles sticking out of them. Reddit users went crazy with theories on this. Was it made by a murderer? Was it a curse? How long had it been just drifting in the ocean for? The creepy contents left more questions than answers. And finally at number 1 now, we have the text message. This one doesn't come from the distant past, but it creeped out a lot of people. In early 2017, Reddit users started sharing stories about how they were getting texts from unknown numbers. That wasn't too strange, that happens every day. What was really strange was the texts were coming from the year 2003. The numbers always seemed to start with 19. Quite often the text would just be completely blank, but sometimes they would contain random characters, such as this one that just said !S. Now the official explanation for all of this was that it was just a technical glitch. Others said it was people from the past trying to contact their future selves. I honestly have no idea. Either way, I know I would freak out if I got a text from an unknown number in the past. Alright, coming in at number 10 now, we have Joshua Rules. In 2015, a man took his brother along with him to go house hunting in Michigan when they stumbled across a dirty, wet and unfinished basement. They saw writing on the wall, and when they took a closer look, they realized that a child used to live down there. One wall read Josh's rules. Number 1, stop reading your walls. Number 2, no watching Isaiah through the hole. And number 3, no writing or drawing on the walls. Number 4, if you don't like these rules, go to number 0. Other messages said things like, don't climb into my room, or, and I think this one is the creepiest, stop watching me. The man posted all of these pictures to Reddit, where users came up with their theories ranging from schizophrenia to the supernatural. Very strange stuff either way. Next up at number 9 now, we have Satan. In 2015, Imgur user Bushi992 posted these pictures to Imgur of the basement and attic in the house that he and his friends had just moved into. As you can see, something went down here. The symbols appeared to be satanic in nature. There were pentagrams, rams, snakes, and strange messages on the wall, such as, for I am the earth and within me the devil burns. Many people asked them why didn't they ask to see the attic and basement before they moved in. I think that's a very good point. I'm not sure if I could sleep knowing this stuff was below me. At number 8 now, we have the tape. Reddit user Lumberjack shared pictures of a small basement passageway that he discovered in his new home. Inside it, he found a locked door, which concealed an entrance to a small room. Inside that room was a briefcase and a safe. He opened that and found some money, a few watches, and videotapes. The tapes had writing on the front of them. One of them simply read, no, 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 no. He handed everything over to the police for investigation. Would you guys have done the same, or would you have ignored the message and watched the tape? I'm not sure if I could have. Okay, next up at number 7 now, we have the tombstone. In 2016, a student from Massachusetts made a grim discovery in their university house basement, a grave. Derek Crook was interviewed about the tombstone next to the boiler in his home. The message on it says, this marks the burial site of Jabez Hardin, who served in the War of 1812. Now he died in 1879 at the age of 83. At first, the housemates were very creeped out by this find, but now James actually quite enjoys shocking visitors to the house by randomly announcing there's a grave in the basement. Maybe that's just his coping mechanism. Next up at number 6, we have graffiti. In 2012, Reddit user Tallest Waldo shared a creepy discovery he found in his basement. This writing, accompanied by some very strange symbols. Another Reddit user identified the symbols as being part of occult spellcasting. They suggested this basement used to be a cult member's ritual workspace. After meditating on the symbols for a while, it seems they had an epiphany and wrote the message that we can now see on the wall. I can kind of make out something about their soul being fire, and the time has come to use the gateway they have opened. What do you guys think it says? I'm not even sure if I want to know. At the number 4 spot now, we have mold. In 2005, a family who moved into a new home were decorating one of the rooms when they noticed the bookcase was a little bit loose. They nudged it and it swung open to reveal a secret passageway. Inside they found a note that read, "Hello, if you're reading this, then you found the secret room." The letter went on to explain how they were the previous tenant of the house but had to move out because of mold, which made their children very sick. The new owners who were reading this actually listened to the warning and moved out because of the mold too. They even sued the broker who sold them the house. I'm sure they're happy they got the warning, but I would be a little bit creeped out to find a note that congratulated me for finding the secret room. Very weird stuff. Alright, next up at number 3 now we have the Asylum. Now not much is known about the picture you're about to see or even who took it, but I think that kind of adds to the whole mysterious allure of it. This was the writing found on the basement wall of an abandoned mental asylum. It reads, "I never knew much about people until I took one apart just to see how it worked." Many commenters online have speculated who exactly wrote this and if perhaps the story behind this message could lead to the reason the asylum was abandoned in the first place. Now we have the bunker. Now for me, a bunker is basically a huge creepy basement with nothing above it. It's like a super basement. In 2014, an Imgur user shared a story and pictures from when they visited a friend in northern Germany. In the woods, they found an abandoned bunker. They followed the endless hospital-like hallways. As they ventured deeper and deeper, they found graffiti on the walls with words like "die" and "help." Eventually, they came across a huge yellow vault door that had been ripped off its hinges. A worrying sight to see. What could have been that powerful? A little further on, they found the creepiest writing so far. A message in German that translates to "Hello Satan, I love you." It wasn't long before they just turned back. That clearly isn't a place you want to stick around in for too long.
Number 10, Jack the Ripper. Okay. Alright, so we're starting off with some Ripper tube or Ripper talk, whatever the kids say. These messages still haunt cold case enthusiasts to this day. I mentioned before in earlier videos with some controversy that the case was solved due to DNA evidence recovered from one of the victims, Catherine Eddowes. But there remains skepticism and ongoing investigations for this case because, it's over 130 years old, and can we really be sure? According to the Smithsonian Magazine, the evidence strongly suggests Barbara Aaron Kaminsky, but still isn't enough to close the case. But this is the main event, the boss letter. The boss letter is one of the creepiest letters he ever wrote, and it is below. "Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." P.S. wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it, no luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. Creepiest letter, and it still makes people want to check out that case to this day. The worst. Number 8, the lipstick killer. We talk about a lot of dark stuff on this channel, so warning, here is another example as to why people are terrifying. The lipstick killer was the name of the infamous criminal who plagued Chicago in the 1940s. After the lives of 3 people were taken viciously in 1946, a chilling message was left in lipstick on the wall of Francis Brown's apartment. The message read, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." The killings were eventually pinned on William Herons, who maintains his innocence to this day. Strangely enough, most of the evidence held against him fell apart. He claims that his arrest was the result of and an overzealous attempt for Chicago police to catch the killer, so it could be that the lipstick killer was still out there somewhere fighting the urge to kill again, and maybe he succeeded, we'll see. Number 7, a real life howler. I think we can all relate in various ways to the fear we get when our parents give us that look or say our full name, so I can't even imagine what it would be like to hear it from the grave. This next story is from Christian 8, and I'll let him tell it. "My family went out of town for spring break and bought a Ouija board. A few minutes into playing, the kitchen sink turned on all by itself. When they asked who it was, the board read, 'Renee.' My great-grandma's name was Renya, and for some reason it kept going over the numbers 3 and 4. Later on, my mom realized that she was 34 at the time that she died. Since then, she refuses to even consider playing it again. She thinks it was her grandma telling her she's still watching. Her grandmother was always very against Ouija boards, so she felt like she was getting in trouble with the dead. Good on you, Grandma. Stay away from Ouija boards, kids. Number 6. A grim warning. This next one came from Reddit user E4E49 and damn. This message is clearly terrifying because even though it's a good thing, the fact that it came from someone who passed away freaks me the heck out. Here is the tale. My dad and I drive through the hills a lot. He's pretty experienced and I don't get car sick, so he really puts his boot into it. However, one day we were coming around a bend when I felt something press hard into my chest, like a hand. It pushed me back against my seat, but I managed to turn toward my dad and say quietly, "Slow down here." And the next moment a car came speeding from the opposite direction. There was a near collision. He laughed nervously as I felt the hand soften on my chest, and I looked out my window to see a cross and flowers. Someone was looking out for us that day. So sad, but so, like, hopefully that's like something they remember, and now the dad's probably not as much of a, no, he's probably still a lead foot, but you know, be safe about it. Number 5, Alois Erlmeyer. World War I, World War II, and will there be a World War III? Well, Alois Erlmeyer, a German man in the 1950s, made such a prediction that many are waiting to come true. Alois stated that the Third World War will begin in the Middle East, and I quote, "Big naval forces are facing hostility in the Mediterranean. The situation is strained, but the actual firing spark is set on fire in the Balkans. I see a large one falling, a bloody dagger lies beside him, and then impact is on impact. 2 men kill a third high ranked, they were paid by other people," unquote. There's plenty more to the prophecy, and the creepiest part for me is when he says, "Immediately revenge comes from across the large water. However, the yellow dragon invades Alaska and Canada at the same time." What does that mean? Let us know if you've read the full prophecy and what your thoughts are in the comments. It's pretty creepy considering the events happening at the moment in the Middle East are explosive to say the least, so hey, you know, the 2012 thing never happened, so maybe this won't. Hopefully this won't, but who knows. Number 4, geoglyphs. The Nazca lines are some of the most mind-boggling ancient geoglyphs on the planet. Due to their sheer size and precision, no one quite knows why they were created and how, but some speculate that they were drawn to symbolize a visit with alien life. Located 250 miles south of Lima, Peru, created by Nazca people, there are over 70 precise depictions of animals plus an image of a decapitation and a large humanoid figure known as the astronaut, right? Some of the designs of the geoglyphs measure around 30 miles, and experts have no idea how or why these drawings were created with such precision. The astronaut is the strangest one of them all, as it kind of looks like it's waving as well, and then it's got like a really big round head, like it's wearing a helmet. Were these drawings an attempt to contact perhaps creatures they saw in the sky? Or is this a message to the future, giving us a sign that something not of this earth once visited? Number 3, Zoroaster. The Zoroastrian religion was one of the world's oldest practiced monotheistic religions based off an ancient Iranian prophet named Zoroaster. It may have originated as far back as 4,000 years ago. After a vision of a divine being, he convinced his followers to worship Ahura Mazda. His prophecy of how the world will end is the most terrifying on this list. He said that a comet named Gokhir will strike the earth at an undetermined point in the future. Lava will flow across the earth, burning all unrighteous beings, while those who are righteous, the lava will merely feel like warm milk. A prediction similar to this one is also in the Bible in Revelations 8:8-9, but hopefully neither come true, but it is really creepy that there are parallels between the two. But again, who really knows? Number 2, the third secret. The Fatima mystery is probably one of my favorite conspiracies I've ever heard about while doing this job. The Vatican have kept these messages a secret in the Vatican archives since the event. In 1917, 3 children allegedly saw an apparition of the Virgin Mary in a field. 70,000 people, after having heard, gathered in the same sheep pasture where they witnessed a spinning silver disc in the sky. The children received 3 messages from the specter, which the Vatican have kept hidden away, and only revealed a censored version of them, allegedly. However, one of the messages leaked out, and apparently it said, and I quote, we are here, we have been since thousands of years ago, and that they will return again. Unquote. Aliens? We don't know. It's nice that if it is aliens, it's nice that they actually were like, hey, just so you know, we've been here for a while. Last but not least, number 1, Saint Hildegard. Saint Hildegard was a 12th century Benedictine nun who was renowned for her extraordinary visions and prophecies. She started writing down her visions when she was in her late 40s. Good on ya, and wasn't someone to go along with any rules. She also was an incredible composer, but with this prophecy, whether you believe in prophecies or not, foretells the end of the world. And I quote, "Before the comet comes, many nations, the good excepted, will be scoured with want and famine. The great nation in the ocean that is inhabited by people of different tribes and descent by an earthquake, storm, and tidal waves will be devastated. It will be divided and a great part submerged." Considering a lot of scientists predict California will fracture by an earthquake and become the new Atlantis, this prophecy is pretty eerie. Also, with the fact that the ice caps are melting and even parts of Canada like Nova Scotia and the East Coast might be underwater, kinda creepy. It also could be pretty North American arrogance for me to assume that the great country in the middle, mixed with a whole bunch of different people, is the place that she's talking about. But what do you think, guys?
Starting off at number 10 now, we have Angie Fenimore. In 1991, she attempted and experienced a life review. Basically, her life unfolded before her eyes, but from the point of view of the people that she knew. She got to experience how those interactions with them made them feel. After that, she remembers being surrounded in an eternal darkness. She saw a group of people nearby and realized she was among others who had committed suicide. She tried to communicate with the others with her mind, but no matter how hard she tried, she was unable to. After a while, she was transferred to another part of hell. This part looked a bit like a field. Lost souls roamed around it. These souls were able to communicate with each other, but they actually refused to. Angie said they were too immersed in their own misery to interact with each other. Never mind Angie. She was sucked into another part of hell and landed on the edge of a shadowy realm, suspended in darkness. She continued to be moved to different parts of hell, seeing more forlorn and lost souls. Then she said God spoke to her through the darkness. He asked her if this is what she really wanted. When she said her life is so hard, God replied, "It is nothing compared to what awaits you if you take your life." What do you guys make of this story? Some religious people use this story as proof of the existence of heaven, hell, and God. Next up at number 9 now we have Zushiba. She was a Reddit user who shared a story about her aunt who died while undergoing an operation. She said she floated above her body on the operating table and saw them trying to revive her. She felt a pull on her and flew out to the top of the room. Suddenly she found herself floating above the ground several inches above a field of dirt. In front of her was a deep, dark chasm. On the other side was a beautiful field of grass flowers and sunlight. Where she was only had brown dirt. She began to hover over the chasm and felt an evil force pulling her down into it. She said it was the worst feeling of pain and horror she had ever experienced. After what felt like an eternity, the hands that were pulling her down went away. She felt happy and warm. She saw family members on the other side. She moved towards them, but suddenly she felt the same hands pull at her again, this time even harder. Again the hands came, and so did the cold. Suddenly there was only darkness. Again she was on the ceiling of her room and saw her body below spasm violently. She heard the doctor say, "She's back," and suddenly it was dark. When she woke up, she told her family about her brush with hell and how she never wanted to be pulled down by those hands when the time really came. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Father Jose Maniyangat. He was a Catholic priest in Florida. In April 1985, he was hit by a drunk driver and nearly died. He was then taken on a trip in which he saw heaven, hell, and purgatory during his near-death experience. He had something to tell everyone about hell. He said it's about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit and filled with souls screaming in agony. He said hell was arranged in 7 levels and the new souls are assigned to a level based on the severity of their sins that they committed in life. He didn't just see people though, he saw people he knew who had died. These included fellow priests and bishops. He said they were there because they had misled people with false teachings and bad examples. Next up at number 7 now we have Bill Weiss. He was a devout Christian who had a near-death experience on November 23rd, 1998. On that night he said he was lying in bed with his wife and was suddenly plunged into hell at exactly 3 AM on the dot. He said it was a very physical experience and that he believes God sent him to hell for him to become a living testimony. In his account, he said he was trapped inside a cell that was 15 by 10 by 15 feet. He wasn't alone either. There were 2 gruesome giants with him. After a while, 2 more vicious creatures entered the cell. When the light disappeared, the 4 giants then attacked him. He was ravaged for 23 minutes. Now the reason he knew that it was exactly that was because he woke up in his bed moments after, and it was 3:23 a.m. Ever since then, Bill has taken it as his life mission to spread the message of hell and its terrors. Moving on to number 6 now, we have Audra. That's the name that this woman gave when telling her story, not wanting to be identified any further. Audra had a seizure which sent her into a coma. She said she felt herself falling down a hole and scrambled for something to hold on to. It smelt like tar and she couldn't see anything above or below her. The more she shouted that she couldn't breathe, the faster she fell. A rocky substance was flying all over the place, especially in her face. All hope was lost. When her seizure ended, she was pulled from this dark place and brought back to life. Ever since that day though, Audra feels that she is somehow destined for hell and that the tunnel was her route to it. Now she lives her life in fear, terrified that she might die one day and return to that place. In an interview with a British newspaper, Audra said, "I continue to live in this bondage-like fear-based state of doing all I can to deserve my place here and earn my place in the afterlife." Next up at number 5 now, we have Howard Storm. At the age of 38, Howard was an atheist. He also had a perforated stomach which led to a near-death experience. He woke up outside of his body and saw people around his hospital bed, but they couldn't hear him speak. He kept moving and found people walking towards him. However, when he tried to stop them to ask a question, they just walked right through him. It was then that he realized he was a ghost. Then he saw a group of people huddled around a door leading to a hallway. For some reason, these people could see him. Not only that, they were trying to tell him something. As he moved towards them, he saw they were urging him to follow them. Reluctantly, he agreed and stepped out into the hallway. Almost instantly, he was enveloped in a thick fog. He continued to follow the figures through this fog. They pestered him to keep up. As the hospital disappeared behind him, the figures turned nasty, shoving and pushing him. Eventually, they revealed themselves to be demons. They turned on him and tried to eat his flesh. Despite being an atheist, he prayed to God. To his amazement, it worked. When he came around the hospital, he vowed to become a Christian. Eventually, he went on to become a church minister and pastor. His story has become famous among those interested in near-death experiences. Moving on to number 2 now, we have George Ritchie. Now, he died of pneumonia in 1943 during World War II. He awoke to find himself in what looked like a hospital room. It looked like the hospital room he had been moved to for his treatment, but something was different. He noticed that all of his belongings were no longer in the room. What was even stranger though was that someone else was in his bed, the same bed that he had just got up from. He felt compelled to find out what was going on and knew the answers lied beyond this room. He stepped into the hospital hallway and followed it to a set of metal doors that led outside. He felt like he had to go to his hometown of Richmond, Virginia. He decided he was going to run there. He ran faster than humanly possible and eventually stopped in a small town. There was an old red cafe with a neon sign in the window. He found himself floating 50 feet above the building. A man below tried to enter the building. George tried to touch his shoulder, but his hand moved right through him as if it was made out of air. It was then that it hit him. He was dead, and the stranger in the hospital bed was actually him. He rushed back to the hospital and stood beside his body. Then he claims Jesus appeared. Jesus took him on a tour of different afterlives. Some looked like places on earth, some looked like nothing he could even imagine. He saw infinite souls battling on a huge plane, mutilating each other beyond belief, but suffering no physical injuries, only the pain that would normally come with them.
Number 9. Do you see him? This one literally gave me chills. Let's say you have a nice vacation home, you go there a few times a year, you're Mr. Moneybags, life's good. That's until you go up to your attic and you find this. A pitch black Polaroid with scratches all over it. And the message, do you see him? Oh my god, this creeps me out. How did it get there? Was it placed there before you bought the place? Or did someone come in and leave it for you? I've broken it down to 2 possible scenarios. 1. The picture was taken by a child in an attempt to make a portrait of their sibling and their finger was over the lens and then they wrote this cute little message on it. Or 2. This is the beginning of a person's torment from a demonic presence. As time goes on, the image will slowly become clearer until it's the last horrifying thing they see before they die. It's the only two logical options. 8. A dead bird with a secret. All sorts of creepy animals and creepy crawlies can work their way into your home. It's happened to me. I used to live in a place with 4 guys. There was mice in the basement and raccoons in the ceiling. Paying rent really makes you respect your parents. But we never found anything as crazy as this. Genre posted on Imager back in 2014 a picture of a pigeon's skeleton. Not particularly scary, but what is much freakier is what's attached to its leg. It has a little red case on it with a coded message. It's suspected to be a World War II secret code that no one has been able to crack. A historian by the name of Gord Young claimed to have solved it, but those claims turned out to be false. So really have no idea what this message says. It could be a deep, dark secret, or my Five Guys order. I love Five Guys. Number 7, a Ouija board. Have you ever wanted to talk to the dead? Or mess around with demonic forces? Are you tempted by the dark arts or intrigued by evil? No, me neither. I want to watch MTV series and order food on Uber Eats and be told that I'm pretty. That's it. So if I found this in my attic, I would freak out. A couple found an antique wooden Ouija board in their home. They found it in pristine condition as if someone had been taking care of it. Their comments on the finding were, "We haven't disturbed the Ouija board." I would disturb it. I would throw it to the bottom of the ocean like the end of Jumanji. Number 3, a father's secret. This one we snagged off of the creepy subreddit, and it's a pretty wild story. Think back to when you were a teenager. You're at home, you're probably a little bored, so you start snooping around your house. You end up in the attic, and you find a chest full of letters. Seems pretty interesting, so you start flipping through them. And then you recognize the handwriting. It's your grandmother's. And all the letters are referencing being in jail, and all the letters are addressed to someone with the same name as your dad. This is exactly what happened to this Redditor. After making the frightening discovery, he took the evidence downstairs to his mom and asked her all about it. She took some prying, but then she confessed that his father had been imprisoned for murder. You think you know a guy, and then he's a murderer. After that, you would win all those arguments though. They're like, my dad could beat up your dad. Like, no, my dad could beat up your dad for sure. Number 2, creepy piggy bank. Kids are always doing the silliest things, like coloring on walls, talking to imaginary friends, decapitating their toys. I actually did this when I was a kid. I pulled the head off my Max Steel action figure and then I cried when I couldn't get it back on. I'm not sure if this kid felt the same remorse. This is off the website Boredom Therapy, and this image is haunting. It seems like some little girl got creative with her arts and crafts and glued the severed head of one of her dolls to the top of this jar. She then labeled the jar with what I assume is the doll's name, Holly. Either that, or a message to some girl named Holly that she's gonna cut off her head and stuff her body full of coins. This is super creepy. It's basically the villain from the original Toy Story if he was more financially responsible. Number 1, Blanche Monnier. Now this last one wasn't exactly a message found in an attic, but an anonymous letter led people straight to an attic. Blanche Monnier is a very unsettling case. The year is 1901. In France, police receive an anonymous tip that someone is being held captive. When they went to investigate, they found Blanche Monnier. The now 52-year-old woman had been locked in her attic by her mother for 25 years. Blanche was almost a skeleton. She was malnourished. She hadn't seen sunlight the entire time she was held captive. Her mother was arrested and Blanche was transferred to a hospital. The saddest part about this is I feel no justice was served because Blanche's mother died 15 days after her arrest, and there was no time for a trial to be held.
Coming in at number 10, we have William Shakespeare's grave. Billy Bob Shakespeare is one of my favourite historical figures of all time for many reasons, but mainly because I loved his drama. William Shakespeare died in 1616 and wrote 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and 2 long narrative poems. My favourite Shakespeare play is probably The Winter's Tale. It's a classic problem play and I really enjoy it, but I also do love Macbeth as a close second. So as we know, the famous English writer had a flair for drama and a great sense of humour. With that in mind, of course he decided to place a curse on his grave. He's buried at the Holy Trinity Church in his home of Stratford-upon-Avon. On his grave he wrote, "Good friends, for love's sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be man spares these stones, and cursed be he who moves my bones." Good on you, Bill. You don't want anyone messing with your bones, I feel you. When the church was restored in 2008, care was taken to keep his bones safe. I might just curse my own grave so that I don't end up getting thrown out in the trash. Good thinking. Coming in at number 9, we have the Zushiba inscription. The thing is about this tomb message is that we have no idea what it says. The Zushiba monument can be found in the grounds of Zushiba Hall in Staffordshire in England. The monument depicts the shepherds of Arcadia, in which shepherds stand around a tomb. Now the monument contains a very cryptic message that reads OUOSVAVV, and this is framed by the letters D and M. A lot of people that think that this is a code, and the monument is regularly hailed as one of the world's top unsolved ciphers. Adding to the mystery, fingers of the stone's figurines touch the letters N and R on the phase et in Arcadia EGO. So what does this mean? Some of the world's top minds, Charles Darwin and Charles Dickens included, have actually failed to solve the text. Coming in at number 8, we have the cursed tablets. In 2003, 4 cursed tablets were found in the grave of a young woman who died around 2,400 years ago in Greece. Brilliant. Back in the day, it seems that cursed tablets were very popular, and people would inscribe curses on metal and offer them to the gods. Burying tablets with the dead was believed to give the tablets direct access to the gods, who would then decide to do the curse's bidding. The curses were aimed at then local innkeepers Demetrios and Fangoria. One of the curses found in the grave read, "Cast your hate upon Fangora and Demetrios, and their tavern and their property and their possessions. I will bind my enemy in blood and ashes with all the dead." Blimey. Another one of the curses found in the grave wished a dog ear curse upon them. Of course. Coming in at number 5, we have this warning. I can't think of anything scarier than going to visit the tombstone of a loved one and finding these tasteless warning signs. Councillors in Plymouth in England placed garish yellow warning signs on the graves that they had deemed unsafe or hazardous. Basically, they were worried that they were going to topple over at some point. I'm all about preventing some danger, but honestly, bright yellow signs that cover the name of the person buried, for me it's a bit of an eyesore. Mourner Paul Ford found his grandparents' grave had one of the signs on and spoke out about how disrespectful it was, and how the message could have been at the back of the grave. True. Coming in at number 4, we have spooky old Midnight Mary. It seems that a very scary message can be found on a grave at the Evergreen Cemetery in New Haven. The inscription is actually a very ghostly warning. The grave belongs to Mary E. Hart, who died under strange circumstances in 1872. Around the top of her grave reads, "The people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away." It seems that Mary was considered somewhat of a witch in her era, and some even say that she haunts the New Haven graveyard to this day, taking souls to the underworld with her if they're by her grave at the stroke of midnight. Of course, these are probably just urban legends made up to match her spooky gravestone, although I still wouldn't want to be around at midnight just in case. You were waiting for him, here he is. Coming in at number 3, we have King Tut's Terror. Do not disturb an ancient Egyptian tomb. Message received loud and clear, although it only took the deaths of 6 people for us to realise. Now a lot of you will be familiar with the curse of the pharaohs and what happened with Tutankhamun's grave, so I will just recap really quickly. In 1922, Egyptologist Lord Carnarvon and archaeologist Howard Carter were the first to enter King Tut's tomb. Carnarvon died from a mosquito bite to the cheek shortly after the tomb was open. A similar mark was also found on the king. George J. Gold, Audrey Hepburn, Hugh Evelyn White, Aaron Ember and Archibald Douglas Reed also died shortly after coming into contact with the tomb or someone who had entered. It seems that outside the burial chamber was an inscription that read, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." Also found in the tomb was a warning on a bracelet that read, "Cursed be he who moves my body, to him shall come fire, water and pestilence." Now the man on the receiving end of this bracelet actually did have his house burned down, then when it was rebuilt it was hit by a flood. Interesting. Coming in at number 2, we have a curse upon the bullies. Well, Mary of Wallingport, Massachusetts certainly got the last word, didn't she? It seems that Mary C. Delancey was a nuisance in her community. She believed her neighbours were up to no good and she would shine lights into their properties. She owned a lot of cats and would spend hours feeding pigeons, which is kinda sweet, but it also seems like she was quite the recluse. She felt her neighbours bullied her and she was unwilling to let bygones be bygones. In one final final act of revenge, she wrote on her tomb, "May eternal damnation be upon those in Whalingport who without knowing me have maliciously vilified me. May the curse of God be upon them and theirs." Cool. Just curse the whole community then. Cheers, babe. Mary died in 1985, and it seems that her curse got lost in the post, as the people of Whalingport don't believe they've come across any misfortune whatsoever. The woman who actually moved into Mary's old home said to a local newspaper that the curse didn't bother her. She said, "I was frankly saddened for this lady who must have had so much turmoil in her life that she'd put this on her gravestone." Another member of the community wrote, "Nobody even takes it seriously, of course. It's a funny thing. We all laugh about it." Ooh, rough ride for old Mary. Okay, coming in at number 10, we have the planes that they died in. Okay, this gives me the serious creeps. In a graveyard deep in the woods surrounding the Amari Air Base, you will find a pilot's graveyard where the bodies of Soviet-era airmen who died are buried with the tail fin of the planes that they crashed in. It's really, really sad, honestly. The tail of the plane that they crashed in is their tombstone. The effect of the fins is that the graveyard kind of looks like it's filled with ground sharks. It's truly haunting and very real when you realize that these are the actual wreckages and they're marking the graves of the dead. It becomes horrifyingly imaginable. Coming in at number 9, we have the Circle of Life. The Circle of Life is a beautiful thing. As we know from the first law of thermodynamics, energy can't be created or destroyed, just transferred. When we die, the energy we had in our bodies is transferred into the soil. We're worm food. The worms are then of course eaten by birds and so on and so forth. It's the Circle of Life. While this is a lovely notion, the gravestone makes the Circle of Life sound rather literal and terrifying. Having passed in 1728 at the age of 42, what does JSD get on his gravestone? Oh, "Here lies Scott, left here to rot." Very, very literal. Coming in at number 8, we have The Mistake. Trial by mob is never ideal, especially when that trial gets you killed. It seems that George Johnson was murdered by locals who only realized the error of their ways when it was too late. The Boot Hill Cemetery in Arizona is famous for being the final resting place for a number of Wild West characters, including the McLaury brothers and Billy Clayton. But this point on this list is all about George. George bought a stolen horse without realizing that it was stolen. He was then sentenced to death despite him being totally innocent. His handmade tomb message reads, "Here lies George Johnson hanged by mistake in 1882. He was right, we were wrong, but we strung him up and now he's gone." Descriptive. Spooky. Scary or kind of funny, you decide. We have the beard at number 7. So I mean, persecution is never funny, like absolute hardline no to persecution, but persecuted for wearing a beard. With that information presented along with this lovely stone carving, I have to say I was strangely darkly amused, or I guess the right word is bemused. Poor Joseph Palmer loved his beard even though it was not in fashion in his lifetime in the early 1800s. It seems his local preacher even accused him of consorting with the devil because of his facial hair. In 1830, Palmer was attacked by a mob outside Fitchburg in Massachusetts. Why? Because he had a beard. They were armed with razors and scissors and they attempted to forcibly shave him. He ended up stabbing 2 of his attackers, lightly if there is such a thing as a light stabbing. He was then jailed and placed in solitary confinement for 15 months. Now his tombstone depicts him with his lovely beard and I'm really happy that he stood up for his facial hair to the very end. Long live the beard. Coming in at number 6, I'm not sure what to name this point other than the pie? What a horrible way to go. Not only did Sir Geoffrey Hudson get a piddly little grave plaque, it is also very descriptive in the creepiest of ways. It seems that Sir Geoffrey had dwarfism, but still made it to the age of 63, which in the 1600s was great, even for those born without a defect. How did Sir Geoffrey go though? Well, his grave says it all. A dwarf presented in a pie to King Charles I. What a way to go. To be fair, the grave doesn't actually make it clear if this is the way he died or if this was the way he was best known. Either way, it is pretty disconcerting. King Charles I, by the way, was said to be wicked and tyrannical. He was bareheaded, so he kind of got what was coming to him. His coffin's in St George's Chapel in Windsor, UK. Coming in at number 5, we have the explosion. I feel like the descriptive gravestones are absolutely the gnarliest. There are a lot of them on this list. Have a listen to the tale of poor Ellen Shannon. Her stone says that she died aged 26 after being fatally burned on the 21st of March 1870 by the explosion of a lamp filled with Reed Danforth's so-called non-explosive burning fluid. I do enjoy that the gravestone makes it clear the brand at fault and calls them out for their false advertising. This is like the sassy TripAdvisor or Twitter comment of the olden days. Although, to be totally fair, the poor woman did die, so it makes it pretty sad. If you want to see this spooky grave for yourself, it is in Girard Cemetery in Pennsylvania. Coming in at number 4, we have the Weeping Woman of Michigan. Okay, like first and foremost, this statue is terrifying from the off. A giant stone woman standing with her arms spread. I can certainly live without her. So this is a statue of the Virgin Mary who has been placed in Battle Creek's Oak Hill Cemetery. Legend has it that she cries real tears every Sunday night, and also apparently on Halloween and during a full moon. The under of her eyes are found to be wet on frequent occasions despite there being no discernible reason. I guess no discernible reason other than she's a spooky statue, and why not? Maybe she's haunted, maybe she's just sad. What scary message is she trying to send? I'm not sure I want to know. We have this killer at number 3, we have Robert Clay Allison. Now it seems that Robert Clay Allison died aged 47 in 1887. He was probably actually pretty young back then. Perhaps it was someone seeking revenge, as it seems that good old Rob was a bit of a social justice warrior, and that's to put it politely. To put it less politely, he was likely a murderer. His grave reads, "He never killed a man that didn't need killing." Either way, who died and made Robert chief of executions? Maybe it was someone that he killed. The swine. Coming in at number 2, we have What They Know. What happens after we die? Well, there isn't really anyone alive who can definitely answer that question. The only people that know are the billions of people who have died over the course of history, also including the owner of this gravestone. Simple, yet effective, it reads, "Now I know something that you don't." Ooh, well they very well just might, or they might not, depending on what actually happens. I like the mysticism though. If you were anywhere near as disgruntled as Mary C. Dolency, then you may have left some terse words on your gravestone to your neighbours too. Finally coming into number 1, we have The Curse. Ooh dear, Mary was a bit of a crazy cat lady stereotype. She hated her neighbours, she would shine lights in their faces and start feuds, and yes, she had a lot of pets, although she did leave all of her money to the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Animal Cruelty. So actually, that really was pretty nice of her. Good on ya. But sadly, she did also leave something not so nice behind, a curse to her community. Hooray! On her tombstone is written, "May eternal damnation be upon those in Whalingport who without knowing me have maliciously vilified me. May the curse of God be upon them and theirs." I'm sorry, what? Do you want to chill out? May the curse of God be upon them. Ooh. It seems though that her tombstone is all talk. Locals say they don't believe they're cursed, which is good news.
Scary messages found in a time capsule brings us to number 9. A demolition crew in Albuquerque, New Mexico discovered a time capsule dated all the way back from 1968. The capsule came from an elementary school, but apparently some kids from the late 1960s had some pretty disturbing predictions for the future. But things took a turn for the worst when they pulled out this note. Some disturbed kids wrote, "I am dead. I was born in the 1900s. You ought to know that I am dead. My favorite subject is spooking the police. I play the guitar. In case you don't know what that is, it's a board with strings on them. I'm 10 years old. See you later, savages." Is anyone else completely freaked out? I think they should fold that letter back up and put it into the dirt where they found it. I wonder if the person who wrote this is still alive. Or maybe they were a guitar-playing ghost who haunted the elementary school. Either way, the people who uncovered this time capsule are probably being haunted by his spirit now. This is why we should leave things where we found them. Next up, number 8, scary message written in an insane asylum. Take a look at this message. This person wrote, "It was more fun in hell." Well, I guess this institution didn't get very good reviews on Yelp. All jokes aside, there's just something so unsettling about this message. It really makes you wonder what the heck went on in this place. Clearly the patients weren't treated well, or this message wouldn't exist. Back in the day, mental institutions used to have a ton of inhumane treatments, such as shock therapy, lobotomies, and they would even use toxic to treat mental disorders. I can understand why this person wrote this message on the wall. I don't think it would be a lot of fun to have a piece of my brain removed, but you know what? That's just my opinion. That's just me. Number 4, we have the mechanic. Let's take a look at what he had to say. I never knew much about people until I took one apart just to see how it worked. What is he talking about? This is probably one of the scariest things that I've ever stumbled across. Also, where was this picture taken? It looks like they're in some scary abandoned underground tunnel. Nothing good ever comes from exploring underground tunnels. Trust me. And who knows, maybe this person is lurking in the shadows waiting for another victim to open up. If you intentionally go to places like this, you are just asking for trouble or worse. A very concerning message brings us to number 3. This message is a pretty short but extremely effective one. Let me know if you guys agree. It says, "Let me out. No thanks. I will not be letting you out anytime soon. I don't know what I'm letting out. You're probably locked up there for a good reason, so I think I'll just leave you alone." If I saw this message, I would turn around and book it out of there in a second. I would just scurry on out. I wouldn't waste time looking for someone who might want to murder me. Well, actually, I should never find myself in this situation because I don't actually enjoy exploring creepy places or old buildings. It's gotta be new and fresh and ghost-free. But that still doesn't mean that I'm not curious about this message though. I wonder if the person was trapped, if he was a victim or maybe a smart serial killer. A creepy message in a bathroom is at number 2. Bathrooms are notorious for having things written on the stalls, but this message might have taken things too far. It says, "We've been waiting for you." Could you imagine going into a public washroom and sitting down to, do your business? But then you read this on the back of your door. And you know what? I can guarantee you that I wouldn't stick around to see what's about to happen. It's already a scary thing to use public washrooms. I mean, for me, I am terrified of it. But this message takes it to a whole other level. You know what? I think from now on, I'm just gonna hold it until I go home. I don't ever want to meet someone who's been waiting for me in the washroom.